The Democrats and legacy media are out of touch with reality. In all honesty, the left in general is, but that is well beyond the scope of this video. What they are trying here as part of their losing touch with it, that is within the scope of it though. Both are working together with the belief that mainstream Democrat and independent voters are going to vote for the far left policies and ideological beliefs that both have embraced and are trying to force on to the rest of us. That is, if they can just get the masses to believe those things have become mainstream. It is all about perceptions at this point, and the Democrats and legacy media are trying to change and shape them, hoping to do the same to reality itself. This is because, as a party, the Democrats have nothing left to stand on except for far-left ideology and policy. They have embraced them while they wasted or threw everything else away they could have stood on for a platform. Because they did this, they are desperate at this point. Even though they actually believe this is going to work for them. Or at least they are praying it will. It is actually kind of funny they are staking everything on their being able to pull this off, too. Both New Hampshire and Iowa have gained a reputation for being two states whose primary and caucus respectively can predict the outcomes of presidential elections. The Democrats and legacy media are hoping to exploit this perception in order to push the idea that far-left policies and ideologies have now become mainstream ones. Whether or not either state is an indicator of who will win the presidential election is beside the point. So is whether or not their views as states reflect those of the nation. Neither has any weight to what the Democrats and legacy media are doing with them. They do not actually care if either state is an indicator of anything after all. All they care about is the perception that each one is. This is because of their only having perceptions left to them as a group. They burned through and pissed away anything else they had to stand on as a foundation for a platform with the run-up to the 2016 election and since. This has left them with their doing this as their only option. They're using these perceptions of Iowa and New Hampshire as a foundation to push their fabricated perceptions that far-left policies and ideology are now mainstream is all that matters to them at this point. Each state was chosen strategically in order to do this too. My state, New Hampshire, it was chosen because of its demographics. The state is supposedly 94% white, which in all honesty, these days I'm not buying that living here. Regardless, because it supposedly is, the Democrats and legacy media see it as the perfect poster child and pawn to use in order to push their narratives and perceptions of whites are bad and must repent for the past sins of others most of them are not related to. That in order for them to do so, reparations are good, affirmative action is good, free shit for blacks is as well, and if you disagree and are white, you are a racist. Because if a white cracker state like New Hampshire has people saying this, it must be mainstream now, right? Their whole basis for this perception they are trying to create is built off of two cities in the state where affluent white liberals and lefties tend to congregate and live. But because they are saying it, it must be representative of the whole state. At least that is what the Washington Post is trying to pass off perceptually. Let me tell you about those two cities. As someone who actually lives in the state and has been to each on numerous occasions, they do not represent the rest of the state. Trust me on this one. Anyone who lives here will tell you this too. Portsmouth, for lack of a better analogy, it's like a little Boston. The nice Boston, not the shitty Boston. But it is one that has elements of what are now West Coast shitholes. I'm talking about places like Portland, Seattle, San Francisco, and the like. Thankfully, minus all the homeless, piles of human shit and needles in the street, or Antifa beating people senseless because of reasons. Given time, though, I am sure it will get there at some point. It has followed their social and societal trends traditionally. So why would those things be any different? Portsmouth and the surrounding communities are New Hampshire's own little Silicon Valley. The region has a lot of tech companies within it. I believe because of this, it has been a factor to this mirroring effect with cities like San Francisco and Seattle. What I think has tempered it traditionally and slowed things down for it has been the masshole liberals that moved there and treat it like a bedroom commuter city. They moved there to have all of the perks of living in a city like Boston without actually living in one. They don't want all of the downfalls of living in Boston. They just want all of the perks. With that, I guess you could call them business liberals. Back during the 90s, Portsmouth was Boston banker crossed with Seattle grunge chic. It was high-end eateries, bars, shops, coffee houses filled with people wearing flannel and denim mixed together, all coexisting. It even had a bit of the San Francisco hippie mixed in with things as well. But like the liberals, they were business hippies.
What kind of hippie are you? What kind of hippie am I, man? I'm a business hippie. I understand the concept of supply and demand.
As the liberal West Coast cities shifted further left, so have Portsmouth and Boston to an extent. Portsmouth more so than Boston because of that West Coast thing going on with it. But they are definitely now playing catch-up with them. Because of these influences, Portsmouth has never represented the views of the rest of the state. For decades, it has been further left than the rest of it has been, even more so today. But the Democrats and legacy media, in this case the Washington Post, do not want you to know this because it destroys the perception they are trying to create with their narrative. When it comes to Concord, besides being the state capital, it and the surrounding area are a region of the state where affluent liberals from New York, Connecticut, Rhode Island, and Massachusetts have tended to move to because of its location. Everything they could want to do is within reasonable driving distance there. If you want to go into Boston, see a show, watch a game, do a day of shopping and hit Faneuil Hall, or whatever else you can think of there, it is about an hour trip to do so. Portsmouth and the Seacoast are about an hour away as well from Concord. So are the White Mountains. Getting to points in Vermont and Maine are also a reasonable driving distance as well. This is a major reason as to why they moved there. Yes, they have influenced Concord and the surrounding communities to an extent, but they are also not representative of the rest of the state. No differently than Portsmouth doesn't represent it for that matter. Yet the Democrats and legacy media want to portray a few people from these cities as if they do. Because if a 94% white state like New Hampshire can be portrayed as repentant for the sins of generations past and made to look like a majority are for those things the Democrat Party are using to pander to a minority with, such as with reparations and free shit for blacks, it creates the perception the majority of the country is for those things as well. This is when the majority of us know differently. But again, this is all about the perception of things. Facts and the truth do not matter. Which is why they are trying to use Iowa as their poster child state for their climate change agenda as well. Iowa is a major agricultural producer, so much so it is the second largest exporter of agricultural goods on a state level. Its economy is built off agriculture. The climate change agenda, for example with the Green New Deal or Paris Accords, it all goes against their best interests, as it does for any agricultural state here in the U.S. The Democrats and legacy media know this too. Which is why they are trying to use Iowa to create the perception that farmers are for their climate change agenda. As a state, Iowa generates $30.6 billion in revenue from agriculture. The Democrats and left's climate change agenda will severely impact this revenue, and farmers know this no differently than the Democrats and legacy media do. But that does not matter to the left. This is because, again, it is all about perception. As long as the Democrats and legacy media can portray the farmers of Iowa on board with their climate change agenda, that is all that matters. Who cares that Ocasio-Cortez's Green New Deal wants to get rid of cows because they fart? So what if that gets rid of 2 of Iowa's top 10 agricultural products sold? I mean, according to the legacy media and Democrats, they're all on board with this, and that perception is all that should matter. So what if the regulatory burden of their climate change agenda is going to price most farmers out of the profession and cause farms to shut down that have been family operated for generations? The large corporate operations that have the revenue to operate within the resulting new regulations will come in and buy them out. Who cares if the added cost plus some will be passed on to consumers? It does not matter so long as the Democrats and legacy media can create the perception farmers are for their climate change agenda for the rest of the country. Because as I've said already more than once, all they have is perceptions at this point, and they are all that matters. Before the presidential election in 2020, we are going to see the Democrats and legacy media doing plenty more of this with other states besides New Hampshire and Iowa. They will either use them to reinforce the identity politics pandering, such as with reparations for blacks, along with their climate change agenda, or they will use them to create the perceptions of their other agendas being mainstream, like open borders and sanctuary for all illegals, for example. What I have shown you here is just the beginnings of it. It is going to get much worse, too. They are hoping by doing this with different states they can put the pieces together like it is some big propaganda puzzle. One that we all need to do is just see the picture it makes in order to agree with the things they want. They are acting like 1984 is a guide on how to win elections and force unpopular agendas on the masses by convincing them they are popular ones. They truly think they are the ministry of truth. Don't let their attempts to program you into believing the perceptions they are creating. Look at the bigger picture, not the selectively cut up and cobbled together Frankenstein of one they have pieced together in order to ignore the parts they do not like. Which this takes us to the end and a piece of advice I have for all of you. It is something I have learned in my lifetime. In part, I arrived at this from studying history, but it applies well beyond the confines and context of it, and well into life itself. Perceptions about something almost never match the reality of it. Because of this, always dig deeper than just the surface. You will find when you do there is much more to the story looking at all the facts behind it. If you liked this video, depending on where you are watching it, please give it an upvote or thumbs up. If you want to know when new content of mine hits the internet, don't forget to subscribe to one or more of my social media or video accounts listed here. Also, with YouTube, don't forget to ring that bell. You can find all of my video content on both BitChute and YouTube. This may not be the case with other places I upload to, but I will try to minimize this happening. You are always welcome to interact with me at any of these sites on the list, so feel free to do so. If you have anything you want me to cover in a video, when it comes to news or current events, send it right along to me. I will try to do my best to cover it. As always, thank you for watching.